Methuselah. After the translation of Enoch, Methuselah was proclaimed ruler of the earth by all the kings. He walked in the footsteps of his father, teaching truth, knowledge, and fear of God. Deviating from the path of rectitude, neither to the left nor the right, he delivered the world from thousands of demons, the posterity of Adam that he had begotten with Lilith, that she-devil of she-devils. These demons and evil spirits, as often as they encountered a man, had sought to injure and even slay him, until Methuselah appeared and supplicated the mercy of God. He spent 3 days in fasting, and then God gave him the permission to write the ineffable name upon his sword, with which he killed 94 myriads of demons in a minute. Then Agrimus, the firstborn of them, came to him and entreated him to desist, at the same time handing the names of the demons and the imps over to him. And so Methuselah placed their kings in iron fetters, while the remainder fled away and hid themselves in the innermost chambers and recesses of the ocean. And it is on account of that wonderful sword, by means of which the demons were killed, that he was called Methuselah. He was so pious a man that he composed 230 parables in praise of God for every word he uttered. When he died, the people heard a great commotion in the heavens, and they saw 900 rows of mourners corresponding to the 900 orders of the Mishnah, which Methuselah had studied. And tears flowed from the eyes of the holy beings down upon the spot where he died. Seeing the grief of the celestials, the people on earth also mourned over the demise of Methuselah, and God rewarded them. He added 7 days to the time of grace which he had ordained before bringing destruction upon the earth by the deluge. The birth of Noah. Methuselah took a wife for his son, Lamech, and she bore Lamech a son. The body of the babe was white as snow and red as a blooming rose. The hair of his head and his long locks were white as wool, and his eyes like the ray of the sun. When he opened his eyes, he lit up the whole house. When he was taken from the hand of the midwife, the babe opened his mouth and praised the Lord of righteousness. His father, Lamech, was afraid of him, and fled, going to his own father, Methuselah. He said to him, "I have begotten a strange son. He is not like a human being, but resembles the children of angels. And his nature is different. He is not like us. His eyes are like the rays of the sun, and his countenance is glorious. It seems that he is not sprung from me, but from the angels. And I fear that in his days a wonder may be wrought on the earth. And now, my father, I am here to petition you and implore you that you go to Enoch, your father, and learn from him the truth, for his dwelling place is in the heavens." When Methuselah heard the words of his son, he searched for Enoch to the ends of the earth. He cried aloud. Enoch heard his voice and appeared before him, asking the reason for his coming. Methuselah told him the cause of his anxiety and requested him to make the truth known. Enoch answered and said, "The Lord will do a new thing in the earth. There will come a great destruction on the earth and a deluge for 1 year. This son who is born to you will be left on the earth, and his 3 children will be saved with him, when all the rest of mankind shall die. There will be a great punishment on the earth, and the earth will be cleansed from all impurity. Make known to your son Lamech that he who is born is in truth his son, and call his name Noah, for he and his children will be saved from the destruction." When Methuselah had heard the words of his father, who showed him all secret things, he returned home, and he called the child Noah, for he would cause the earth to rejoice in compensation for all destruction. By the name Noah he was only called by his grandfather, Methuselah. His father and all others called him Menahem. His generation was addicted to sorcery, and Methuselah feared that his grandson might be bewitched if his true name were known, so he kept it a secret. Menahem, comforter, suited him as well as Noah, It indicated that he would be a consoler, if but the evildoers of his time would repent of their misdeeds. At his very birth it was felt that he would bring consolation and deliverance. When the Lord said to Adam, "Cursed is the ground for your sake," Adam asked, "For how long a time?" And the answer made by God was, "Until a man is born whose form is such that the rite of circumcision need not be practiced on him." This was fulfilled in Noah. He was circumcised from his mother's womb. Noah had scarcely come into the world when a marked change was noticeable. Since the curse brought upon the earth by the sin of Adam, it happened that wheat being sown, oats would sprout and grow. The trouble also among all other crops. This ceased with the appearance of Noah. Then the earth bore the products planted in it. And it was Noah who, when he was grown to manhood, invented the plow, the scythe, the hoe, and other implements for cultivating the ground. Before him, men had worked the land with their bare hands. There was another token to indicate that the child born to Lamech was appointed for an extraordinary destiny. When God created Adam, he gave him dominion over all things. The cow obeyed the plowman, and the furrow was willing to be drawn. But after the fall of Adam, all things rebelled against him. The cow refused obedience, and also the furrow was impossible. Then Noah was born, and all returned to its state preceding the fall of man. Before the birth of Noah, the sea was in the habit of transgressing its bounds twice daily, morning and evening, and flooding the land up to the graves. After his birth, it kept within its confines. And the famine that afflicted the world in the time of Lamech, the second of the great famines appointed, ceased its ravages with the birth of Noah. The punishment of the fallen angels. Grown to manhood, Noah followed in the ways of his grandfather Methuselah, while all other men of the time rose up against that pious king. Far from observing his precepts, they pursued the evil inclination of their hearts, perpetrating all sorts of abomination. Chiefly, the fallen angels and their giant posterity caused the depravity of mankind. The blood spilled by the angels cried out to heaven, and the four archangels accused the fallen angels and their sons before God, and he gave the following orders to them. Uriel was sent to Noah to announce that the earth would be destroyed by a flood, and to teach him how to save his own life. Raziel was told to put the fallen angel Azazel into chains and cast him into a pit of sharp and pointed stones in the desert Dudael, and cover him with darkness, to remain there until the great day of judgment, when he would be thrown into the fiery pit of hell, and the earth would be healed of the corruption he had contrived upon it. Gabriel was charged to proceed against the bastards and the reprobates, the sons of the angels begotten with the daughters of men, and plunge them into deadly conflicts with one another. Shemazai's crew were handed over to Michael, who first caused them to witness the death of their children in bloody combat with each other, and then he bound and pinned them under the hills of the earth, where they will remain for 70 generations, until the day of judgment, then to also be carried off to the fiery pit of hell. The fall of Azazel and Shemazai came about in this way. When the generation of the deluge began to practice idolatry, God was deeply grieved. Then the two angels Shemazai and Azazel arose and said, "O Lord of the world, it has happened, that which we foretold at the creation of man, saying, 'What is man that you are mindful of him?' And God said, 'And what will become of the world now without man?' Whereupon the angels, 'We will occupy it ourselves.' Then God said, 'I am well aware of it, and I know that if you inhabit the earth, the evil inclination will overpower you, and you will be more evil than men ever were.' The angels pleaded, 'Grant us permission to dwell among men, and you will see how we sanctify your name.' God yielded to their wish, saying, 'Descend and sojourn among men.' But when the angels came to earth and saw the daughters of men in all their grace and beauty, they could not restrain their passion, Shemaziah saw a maiden named Istahar, and he lost his heart to her. She promised to surrender herself to him if first he taught her the ineffable name, by means of which he raised himself to heaven. He assented to her condition, but once she knew it, she pronounced the name and herself ascended to heaven, without fulfilling her promise. God then said, "Because she kept herself aloof from sin, we will place her among the 7 stars, that men may never forget her." And she was put in the constellation of the Pleiades. Still, Shemaziah and Azazel were not deterred from entering into alliances with the daughters of men, and to Shemaziah 2 sons were born. Azazel began to devise the finery and ornaments by means of which women allure men. Then God sent Metatron to tell Shemaziah of his disgust and his decision to destroy the world by a deluge. The fallen angel began to weep and grieve over the fate of the world and the fate of his 2 sons. If the world went under, what would they have to eat? They, who needed daily 1,000 camels, 1,000 horses, and 1,000 steers. These 2 sons of Shemaziah, Hiwa and Hiah by name, dreamed dreams. The one saw a great stone which covered the earth, and the earth was marked all over with lines upon lines of writing. An angel came, and with a knife obliterated all the lines, leaving but 4 letters upon the stone. The other son saw a large pleasure grove planted with all sorts of trees. But angels approached bearing axes, and they felled the trees, sparing but a single one with 3 of its branches. When Hiwa and Hiah awoke, they went to their father, who interpreted the dream, saying, "God will bring a deluge, and none will escape, except Noah and his sons." When they heard this, the 2 began to cry and scream, but their father consoled them. "Soft, soft, do not grieve. As often as men cut or haul stones or launch vessels, they shall chant and invoke your names. Hiwa, Hiya." This prophecy soothed them. Shemaziah then did penance. He suspended himself between heaven and earth, and in this position of a penitent sinner he hangs to this day. But Azazel persisted obdurately in his sin of leading mankind astray by means of sensual allurements. For this reason 2 he-goats were sacrificed in the temple on the Day of Atonement, the one for God, that he pardon the sins of Israel, the other for Azazel, that he bear the sins of Israel. Unlike Istahar, the pious maiden, Naamah, the lovely sister of Tubal-Cain, led the angels astray with her beauty, and from her union with Shamdan sprang the devil Asmodeus. She was as shameless as all the other descendants of Cain, and as prone to bestial indulgences. Cainite women and Cainite men alike were in the habit of walking around naked, and they gave themselves up to every conceivable manner of lewd practice. Of such were the women whose beauty and sensual charms tempted the angels from the path of virtue. The angels, on the other hand, no sooner had they rebelled against God and descended to earth than they lost their transcendental qualities, and were invested with sublunary bodies, so that a union with the daughters of men became possible. The offspring of these alliances between the angels and the Cainite women were the giants, known for their strength and their sinfulness. As their very name, the Eman, indicates, they inspired fear. They have many other names. Sometimes they go by the name Raphaim, because one glance at them made one's heart grow weak, or by the name Geborim, simply giants, or by the name Zamzummim, because they were great masters in war, or finally by the name Nephilim, because, bringing the world to its fall, they themselves fell. The generation of the deluge. While the descendants of Cain resembled their father in his sinfulness and depravity, the descendants of Seth led a pious, well-regulated life, and the difference between the conduct of the two tribes was reflected in their habitations. The family of Seth settled upon the mountains in the vicinity of Paradise, while the family of Cain resided in the field of Damascus, the spot where Abel was slain. Unfortunately, at the time of Methuselah, following the death of Adam, the family of Seth became corrupted after the manner of the Cainites. The two strains united with each other to execute all kinds of iniquitous deeds. The result of the marriages between them were the Nephilim, whose sins brought the deluge upon the world. In their arrogance, they claimed the same pedigree as the posterity of Seth, and they compared themselves with princes and men of noble descent. The wantonness of this generation was, in a measure, due to the ideal conditions under which mankind lived before the flood. As was mentioned before, the birth of Noah brought many changes for the better. They knew neither toil nor care, and as a consequence of their extraordinary prosperity, they grew insolent. In their arrogance, they rose up against God. A single planting bore a harvest sufficient for the needs of 40 years, and by means of magic arts, they could compel the very sun and moon to stand ready to do their service. The raising of children gave them no trouble. They were born after a few days' pregnancy, and immediately after birth they could walk and talk. They themselves aided their mother in severing the navel string. Not even demons could do them harm. Once, a newborn babe, running to fetch a light by which his mother might cut the navel string, met the chief of the demons, and a combat ensued between the two. Suddenly the crowing of a rooster was heard, and the demon ran off, crying out to the child, "Go, report to your mother. If it had not been for the crowing of the rooster, I would have killed you." The child retorted, "Go and tell your mother, if it had not been for my uncut navel string, I'd have killed you." It was their carefree life that gave them space and leisure for their infamies. For a time, God, in his long-suffering and kindness, passed by the iniquities of men, but his forbearance ceased once they began to lead unchaste lives. For God is patient with all sins, excepting only an immoral life. The other sin that quickened the end of the evil generation was their rapacity. So cunningly were their depredations planned that the law could not touch them. If a farmer brought a basket of vegetables to market, they would edge up to it, one after the other, and abstract a bit, each in itself of petty value. But in a little while the farmer would have nothing left to sell. Even after God had resolved upon the destruction of the sinners, he still permitted his mercy to prevail, in that he sent Noah to them, who exhorted them for 120 years to amend their ways, always holding the flood over them as a threat. As for them, they but derided him. When they saw him occupying himself with the building of the ark, they asked, "Why build this ark?" Noah, "Because God will bring a flood on you." The sinners, "What sort of flood? If he sends a fire flood, against that we know how to protect ourselves. If it is a flood of waters, then if the waters bubble up from the earth, we will cover them with iron rods. And if they descend from above, we know a remedy against that too." Noah, "The waters will ooze out from under your feet, and you will not be able to ward them off." Partly, they persisted in their hardness of heart because Noah had made known to them that the flood would not descend so long as the pious Methuselah lived. The term of 120 years, which God had appointed as the term of probation, having expired, Methuselah died. But out of regard for the memory of this pious man, God gave them another week's respite, the week of grieving for Methuselah. During this time of grace, the laws of nature were suspended. The sun rose in the west and set in the east. To the sinners, God gave the dainties that await man in the future world, for the purpose of showing them what they were forfeiting. But all this proved unavailing, and, Methuselah and all the other pious men of the generation having departed this life, God brought the deluge. The Holy Book. Great wisdom was needed for building the ark, which was to have space for all beings on earth, even the spirits. Only the fishes did not have to be provided for. Noah acquired the necessary wisdom from the book given to Adam by the angel Raziel, in which all celestial and all earthly knowledge is recorded. While the first human pair were still in paradise, it once happened that Samael, accompanied by a lad, approached Eve and requested her to keep an eye on his little son until he returned. When Adam came back from a walk in paradise, he found a howling, screaming child with Eve, who, in reply to his question, told him it was Samael's. Adam was annoyed, and his annoyance grew as the boy cried and screamed more and more violently. In his vexation, he dealt the little one a blow that killed him, but the corpse did not cease to wail and weep, nor did it cease when Adam cut it up into bits. To rid himself of the plague, Adam cooked the remains, and he and Eve ate them. Scarcely had they finished when Samael appeared and demanded his son. The two malefactors tried to deny everything. They pretended they had no knowledge of the boy. But Samael said to them, "What? You dare tell lies? And God, in times to come, will give Israel the Torah, in which it is said, 'Keep you far from false words'?" While they were speaking so, suddenly the voice of the slain lad was heard proceeding from the heart of Adam and Eve, and it addressed these words to Samael: "Go now, I have penetrated into the hearts of Adam and Eve, and never again shall I quit their hearts, nor the hearts of their children, or their children's children, to the end of all generations." Samael departed, but Adam was sore grieved, and he put on sackcloth and ashes, and he fasted many, many days, until God appeared to him and said, "My son, have no fear of Samael. I will give you a remedy that will help you against him, for it was at my instance that he came to you." Adam asked, "And where is the Torah?" God then gave him the book of the angel Raziel, which he studied day and night. After some time had passed, the angels visited Adam, and, envious of the wisdom he had drawn from the book, they sought to destroy him deceivingly by calling him a god and prostrating themselves before him. In spite of his protest, "Do not prostrate yourselves before me, but magnify the Lord with me." However, the envy of the angels was so great that they stole the book God had given Adam and threw it in the sea. Adam searched for it everywhere, in vain, and the loss distressed him sorely. Again he fasted many days until God appeared to him and said, "Fear not, I will give the book back to you." And he called Rahab, the angel of the sea, and ordered him to recover the book and restore it to Adam, and so he did. Upon the death of Adam, the holy book disappeared, but later the cave in which it was hidden was revealed to Enoch in a dream. It was from this book that Enoch drew his knowledge of nature, of the earth, and of the heavens, and he became so wise through it that his wisdom exceeded the wisdom of Adam. Once he had committed it to memory, Enoch hid the book again. Now, when God resolved to bring the flood on the earth, he sent the archangel Raziel to Noah as the bearer of the following message: "I give you now the holy book, that all the secrets and mysteries in it may be made known to you, that you may know how to fulfill its meaning in holiness, purity, modesty, and humbleness. You will learn from it how to build an ark, in which you and your sons and your wife shall find protection." Noah took the book, and when he studied it, the Holy Spirit came upon him, and he knew all things needed for the building of the ark and the gathering of the animals. The book, which was made of sapphires, Noah took into the ark, having first enclosed it in a golden casket. All the time he spent in the ark, it served him as a timepiece, distinguishing night from day. Before his death, he entrusted it to Shem, and he in turn to Abraham. From Abraham it descended through Jacob, Levi, Moses, and Joshua to Solomon, who learned all his wisdom from it, his skill in the healing arts, and also his mastery over demons. the inmates of the ark. The ark was completed according to the instructions in the book of Raziel. Noah's next task was to gather in the animals, no less than 32 species of birds and 365 of reptiles. But God ordered the animals to come to the ark, and Noah did not have to do so much as stretch out a finger. Indeed, more appeared than were required, so God instructed Noah to sit at the door of the ark and note which of the animals lay down as they reached the entrance and which stood. The former belonged in the ark, but not the latter. Taking up his post, as he had been commanded, Noah observed a lioness with her 2 cubs. All 3 crouched, but the 2 young ones began to struggle with the mother, and she arose and stood up next to them. So Noah led the 2 cubs into the ark. The wild beasts and cattle and the birds that were not accepted remained standing about the ark all of 7 days, for the descending of the animals happened 1 week before the flood began to descend. On the day when they came to the ark, the sun was darkened, and the foundations of the earth quaked, and lightning flashed, and the thunder boomed as never before. And yet the sinners remained impenitent. They did not change their ways during those last 7 days. When finally the flood broke loose, 700,000 of the children of men gathered around the ark and implored Noah to grant them protection. With a loud voice he replied, "Are you not those who were rebellious toward God, saying, 'There is no God'? Therefore, he has brought ruin on you, to annihilate you and destroy you. Have I not been prophesying this to you for 120 years, and you would not give heed to the voice of God? Yet now you desire to be kept alive." Then the sinners cried out, "So be it. We are now all ready to turn back to God, if only you will open the door to your ark and receive us." Noah answered, "That you do now, when your need presses hard on you. Why did you not turn to God during all the 120 years which the Lord appointed to you as the term of repentance? Now you come, and you speak so, because distress besets your lives. Therefore, God will not hear you, and now you are doomed." The crowd of sinners tried to take the entrance by storm, but the wild beasts keeping watch around the ark set upon them, and many were slain. The rest escaped, only to meet death in the waters of the flood. The water alone could not have made an end to them, for they were giants in stature and strength. When Noah threatened them, they would make reply, "If the waters come up from above, they will never reach up to our necks, and if they come from below, the soles of our feet are large enough to dam up the springs." But God made each drop to pass through Gehenna, and the hot rain scalded the skin of the sinners. The punishment that overtook them was befitting their crime, as their sensual desires had made them hot, inflaming them to immoral excesses, so they were chastised by means of hot water. Not even in the hour of the death struggle could the sinners suppress their vile instincts. When the water began to stream up out of the springs, they threw in their little children to choke the flood. It was by the grace of God, not on account of his merits, that Noah found shelter in the ark. Although he was better than his contemporaries, he was not worthy of having wonders done for his sake. He had so little faith that he did not enter the ark until the waters had risen to his knees. With him, his pious wife Naamah, the daughter of Enosh, escaped the peril, and his 3 sons, and the wives of his 3 sons. Noah had not married until he was 498 years old. Then the Lord told him to take a wife. He had not desired to bring children into the world, seeing that they would all have to perish in the flood. His 3 sons were born to him shortly before the deluge. God had given him so small a number of offspring so that the ark would not have to be built on an overlarge scale, in case they turned out to be pious. And if not, if they too were depraved like the rest of their generation, then Noah would be spared the increased sorrow of their destruction. As Noah and his family were the only ones not to have a share in the corruptness of the age, So the animals received into the ark were such as had led a natural life. For the animals of the time were as immoral as the men. The dog united with the wolf, the rooster with the peacock, and many others likewise. Those that were saved were those who kept themselves untainted. Before the flood, the number of unclean animals had been greater than the number of clean. Afterward, the ratio was reversed, because, while 7 pairs of clean animals were preserved in the ark, only 2 pairs of the unclean were preserved. One animal, the reem, Noah could not take into the ark. On account of its huge size, it could not find room. So Noah tied it to the ark, and it ran on behind. Also, he could not make space for the giant Og, the king of Bashan. He sat on top of the ark securely, and in this way escaped the flood. Noah gave his food to him daily, passed out through a hole. Og had promised Noah that he and his descendants would serve him as slaves in perpetuity. 2 creatures of a most peculiar kind also found refuge in the ark. Among the beings that came asking for shelter was Falsehood. He was denied admission because he had no companion. Noah was taking in animals only by pairs. Falsehood went off to seek a partner, and he met Misfortune, whom he associated with himself on the condition that she might appropriate whatever Falsehood earned. The pair were then accepted in the ark. When they left, Falsehood noticed that whatever he gathered together disappeared at once, and he went to his companion to seek an explanation, which she gave him in the following words: "Did we not agree to the condition that I might take what you earn?" And Falsehood had to depart empty-handed. Next, the flood. End Part 8 of 95, TheLegendsOfTheJews.com.